Now that we've created the toolpath for our first label, we're going to create a stock model that reflects what this part will look like after this toolpath. My insertion arrow is currently between the stock model and the contour toolpath. I need to move the insertion arrow. A couple of different ways you can do it. I prefer to use the arrows at the top of the toolpath manager. Once you place the insertion arrow at the very end of the toolpath group, go to the toolpath tab, stock model. We're going to call this one machining front label. Stock plane should still be set to top. For the initial stock shape, we're going to use a stock model that we've already created. I'll select stock model. And I accidentally named the first stock model incorrectly. It should be named raw stock. So I'm just going to select it for the moment. It's the only one that's available. And then I'll go to source operation and select the contour toolpath that we just created. I'll select OK. You can see the stock model being created and it's overlaying the solid model that represents our part. If I go to the level manager and I make the flat boundary surfaces the active level, and actually I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to make the wireframe the active level. And then I'm going to make the material level invisible. You can't make an active level invisible, so I'll make the wireframe level the active level, and then I can make the material level invisible. I go back to the toolpath group. I need to make this stock model invisible. And it's not showing me. Maybe it's there. I just got to turn off the level. Yes, it's there. Very difficult to see. The width of the letters is not, or the width of the engraving is not much greater than the width of the lines. So at least visibly or visually. So I can see the front label has been engraved onto the front face. Something I'll need to do, I'll go back to the toolpath manager. I need to rename this first stock model. So I'll go to parameters. And under stock definition, I'm going to call this one raw stock. So this is the very first stock model that we created. It should have been called raw stock. From here, I'll select OK. And I believe it updated automatically. So if I go back to the second stock model, go into the parameters of it. For the, yeah, so it did update. So the initial stock shape, it did update to raw stock. So I'm good there. I'll look at it from an isometric view. I'll go back to the level manager. I'll make the flat boundary surfaces visible. And actually, I'll keep that, set them to invisible. I'll make the right side label, I'll make the right side label visible. I'll go back to the toolpath manager. Now that we've created one of the toolpaths, what we're going to do is we're going to copy, paste, and make a few changes to the existing toolpath so that it works for the following toolpaths. We're going to do this several times. And once you do it 2 or 3 times, it becomes quite repetitious and we can get it done pretty quickly. So let's do this. Let's select just the contour toolpath. The green check is next to just the contour toolpath. Right click, copy. Next to the insertion arrow, right click, paste. Things that we'll need to change. We're going to need to change the geometry that's driving the toolpath. And we need to change the coordinate system that the toolpath is referencing. or the tool plane that the toolpath is referencing. To do that, I'm going to start by going into the parameters for the new toolpath. On the upper left-hand side of your screen, go down to planes. Currently set the front plane. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to top. I'm going to change this one to our side, or our side plane. And I'm going to carry it over to the construction plane. So I'm going to keep the working coordinate system set to top. Tool plane will be our side plane, and then the construction plane will be our side plane. So we change the tool plane and construction plane. Then go up to the toolpath. We can access the geometry from over here. Select, we can start by deselecting, remove selected chains, and then select chains. Brings up the chaining dialog box. The settings will carry over from the last time that we used this wireframe chaining dialog box. So wireframe 3D window. I have everything except the wireframe and the right side label geometry visible. If I window select over the R side label, it says sketch approximate start point. I will let my cursor lock onto the bottom of the R. You want to make sure that you're only selecting the geometry that makes up the letters. From here, I'll select OK. And that should take care of all the changes that we need to make for the new toolpath. All we did was change the planes and the geometry that's driving the toolpath. From here, I'll select OK. I'll need to regenerate this toolpath. So regenerate all dirty operations. It says no operations were selected, so I'll select it. And it might be updating, or it might be regenerating automatically. So with that said, try and run backplot. Oh, it's still showing that toolpath. So from here, there we go. It wouldn't let me select this one for whatever reason, or I was selecting it incorrectly, I should say. So I have a green check next to this toolpath. I can select regenerate all selected operations. Now, if I run backplot, you can see the tool is now perpendicular to the right side face. If I select play, it's engraving the right side label. Looks good. I'm going to make the previous stock model invisible, or toggle off the visibility of that stock model. And then if I select the entire first operation toolpath group and run it and verify, we should see the engraving of the front side and the left or right side at this time. Tumble my view a little bit. Stop condition collision is still turned on. I'll select play. And what I'll do is I'll get in the habit of turning off the wireframe geometry before I go into verify, because it's difficult to see unless you really zoom in. But you can now see that I got the front label engraved and I have the right side label engraved. So from here, I can exit verify. We need to create a stock model that reflects what this toolpath has done. So once again, with your insertion arrow at the very end of the toolpath group, go to Toolpaths, stock model. For the name will say machine or machining side label. For the initial stock shape, we're going to use the stock model from the previous operation. So stock model, expand the menu, select the front machine or machining front label. From here, go to source operation. And we need to select the toolpath that's actually doing the machining for this particular stock model. And in this case, it's the second contour toolpath. I'll select OK. It generates, or Mastercam generates, the stock model. I go back to the level manager and make the backside label visible and the R side label invisible. You can now see the engraved text on the right side face. From here, I'll go back to the toolpath manager. I'll toggle off the visibility of this stock model. And we're going to copy and paste another toolpath. And we're going to reselect the geometry and change or update the tool plane. And I'll update the tool plane, then select the geometry. It doesn't matter which toolpath you select. Make sure you're selecting only one of them. Right click, copy, and then next to the insertion arrow, right click, paste. Expand the new toolpath if it's not already expanded. Select parameters. Select planes. And I'm going to leave the working coordinate system set to top for everything but the bottom. So over here where it says tool plane, select this icon, select tool plane. We're now going to select the back plane. I'll select OK. And then I'll carry it over to the construction plane. Go back up to the toolpath type. Currently, we have the chains or the geometry driving the toolpath from the previous toolpath. So I'll start by deselecting all chains or remove selected chains. I'll select chains. Brings up the wireframe chaining dialog box. Once again, the settings are carrying over from the last time that we used it. Carefully window select just your back initials or the back face initials. It says sketch approximate start point. So after you window select it, lock onto the lower left corner of the geometry. Left click. Everything becomes selected. From here, I'll select OK. And that's all we should have to change for this toolpath, or to make this copied toolpath work for this next face that we're engraving. So from here, I'll select OK. And in the new version, it appears as if the toolpaths update automatically, so I don't need to regenerate it. I'll select verify. And I could have selected all of the toolpaths, the entire toolpath group. Select play. I can see it engraving. If I zoom in, it did engrave the letters on that face. I'll exit verify. I'm going to minimize that toolpath. Right click on my screen, look at it from an isometric view. Now, this is an isometric view relative to the top coordinate system. So you can see the engraving is happening on the back face. I'm going to create a stock model that reflects what this toolpath has done. Before I do that, I'll go to the levels manager. I'll make the left side label visible. I'll make the back pane or back plane text invisible. Go back to the toolpath manager. We need to create the stock model that reflects what this toolpath has done. I'll go to Toolpaths, stock model. For the name, we'll call this one machining back label. For the initial stock shape, I'm going to select the stock model from the previous operation. And then for the source operation, I'm going to select the contour toolpath that we just created. I'll select OK. Mastercam will generate the stock model. And you should now see the front, right side, and back side or back labels engraved. From here, I can look at it from a default isometric view. I'll save my work. We're now ready to create the next toolpath.